John and Gregg are not role models. While they are human, they are about to delve into the world of the most uncouth of cartoons. Some of the things they will talk about and language they use to describe things would cause pearls to be clutched, blood pressure to rise, and hopefully not get John deported. To put it another way, don't listen at work or around kids at home. Listener discretion is advised. Butt munch. What's up, everybody? This week, Greg and I talk about the show that nailed the mind of teenagers everywhere, Beavis and Butthead. That and a whole lot more is to come, because maybe... he said nailed. So this one's going to be a little different this week. It's, oh man, we've had some controversial subjects over the last couple of weeks, but this is one that's going to be, yeah, this one's going to be good. Hi everybody, what's going on? As I mentioned earlier, I'm talking about the great Beavis and Butthead, and I'm joined by Greg. Greg, man, how are you, brother?
Hey, doing good. Good to be back as always. Did I say good like 5 times? Can I say more? Good.
It's good to be back. Man, after last week's goofiness, with my wife put in one of the greatest Oasis songs of all time, a random Seaside, which only was on the vinyl version, which was a comedy song. Yeah, I'm ready for anything, man. Beavis and Butthead is gonna be a good one. But before we get into it, guys, if you're on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, or Instagram, check out Because Maybe Network. Look at bit.ly-bm network-YouTube, and if, of course, this is not where you usually listen to podcasts, go into Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and tune in, and that's where you'll find us. So, Beavis and Butthead, man.
It weirdly, it almost, I don't want to say it defined the generation, but it was definitely a cornerstone centerpiece of that sort of 90s pop culture, if you will.
It was generation.
Yeah, it had a real something to it. It was unlike anything that we had really ever seen before as far as an animated series, so.
Groundbreaking is always overused, but I think this was definitely groundbreaking.
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, it was rude and crude, and, they were really complex yet simple characters in a lot of ways. Yeah. It was definitely something.
I don't know. This is the thing. How it was written, which we'll get into here in a little bit. It's weird how it was so dumb, but because it was so dumb, it was genius.
Yeah, exactly. I used to watch it a lot with my mom, and she would just bust a gut. Sometimes listening to that. And because a lot of it I think might have kind of went over my head at the time. But it was always really cleverly written, really, really well done.
My sister was a big fan of this stuff. I know I've mentioned my sister a lot, but one of my sisters is 6 years older than me, and this was her thing because my folks used to go out. I don't know how it worked over here, but like every Sunday night in working men's towns in the UK, they have like a big night of entertainment, which is usually like a local karaoke act and a racist comic and a bad magician or some crap like that. And so my folks would go out every Sunday to that, right? And they come home with takeaways and stuff like that. But my sister would always 9:30 every night MTV. This would be on. Yep. And she thought it was hilarious. Like I said earlier, this is basically, if you want to know the mentality of Generation X, this is this is it in 10 to 15 minute installments.
Yeah, it's kind of the worst, I guess, like the worst example possible in a sense. But yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, the obsession with the mall and music and the no laziness, no motivation. I guess you, in a sense, you could argue it's kind of like the stereotypical portrayal of it.
This is what Doug would become in high school. Yes.
Like metal.
So before we get too far into it, right, let's for all the nerds out there who like these kind of information, this was a satirical animated series.
Yeah.
And the satire was modern teenage and adult culture.
I'm honestly surprised by that. I figured it would just be labeled like a comedy. But that makes sense. It's just
it's a complete, AVGN said it the best. It's a social satire.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Social commentary or whatever.
Yeah. He's.
Gotcha.
I think I got the quote. I think I got the quote in here somewhere. Hang on one second. In all my 8,000 pages of research. They seem to represent the kind of primal teenage inner self, a warning of what our generation might come to if we don't subdue that inner self. A social satire, covered in fart jokes.
Yes. I remember that from the one of the episodes he did about that. Yeah,
it was Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, I love he can be just eloquent with that sort of thing. He's definitely a smart guy.
He's very, very eloquent with a few fart jokes in there. Because that's his thing, But
balance it out,
This was created by Mike Judge, who went on later to create Daria, obviously, and King of the Hill.
Yeah, two really great shows.
Two really great, and Daria's kind of cheating, but not really. But the original run, which is what we are going to be talking about, 1992 to 1997, there was 8 seasons and 222 episodes.
When I was first reading these notes, I was kind of blown away by that number. I can't believe it was that they got that much content and mileage off of essentially a handful of characters that centered around Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason is that everybody's got those kind of stories, right? I mean, everybody, every teenager's got that high school story, that mole story, that shitty job story,
right? Yeah, that embarrassing cornholio incident.
Yeah, so you can definitely stretch it, and if you've only got like 10 minutes to work with, you can recycle the story with different elements. Because what it did, and this is the thing, I think one of the strengths of the show, is that it had a 10-minute cartoon, right? The show, every show was 30 minutes, standard 30 minutes, right? Which in reality is about 25 minutes if you had the
23, 25, depending on how terrible the network is.
Yeah, and 10 minutes of that was the cartoon, the day-to-day life of Beavis and Butthead. And then the remaining 10 to 15 minutes was them reviewing music.
Yeah.
And they reviewed everything. I mean, they reviewed everything from AC/DC to Celine Dion.
To, like, Boyz II Men. I mean, I remember seeing a variety. I think some of my favorite ones were the hair metal ones. Yes. And I actually have a story for one of those, if I may, real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay. When I was a kid, I was living in Tucson, Arizona for a little while, and like my mom and I used to watch Beavis and Butthead together all the time because she thought it was funny, and then she knew it was edgy, so she thought it was important to kind of watch it with me, right? In case there was something that needed clarification or whatever. But more or less, it just turned into us just watching it and laughing together. So we were watching the one, I can't remember what episode it was, but it was one where they were watching a Whitesnake video. So it was like, bikini clad babes and like fog and cars and, all these just like macho, like 80s, stereotypes or whatever. Yeah. So exactly. The hair that's like a bushel, just like a pharaoh's cap, with that, just like this perfect little orb on. Yeah. But anyway, we're watching this episode that's got the Whitesnake video in it, and they do not like it at all. But they like the fact that there's scantily clad women in it. They love that. They don't really care for the music, and they especially don't care for the smoke that's going, because it's like covering the
it's covering the chick.
Yeah, covering up all the stuff they want to see. So Beavis finally goes, "This white smoke is starting to piss me off." So anyways, we laughed really, really hard about it. And I was like 8th grade, somewhere around there. So that was right around when the Amber Alert became a thing. So my mom sat me down and we had this talk about, like, you know, if somebody tried to pick me up from school or from somewhere and I wasn't sure who they were, she's like, we need to have a code so that you know that that person is who they say they are and that I sent them. And I was like, okay, how about this white smoke is starting to piss me off? Because it was this inside joke. It was funny. We would remember it. You know what I mean? Like, so, okay, so one of my mom's coworkers has to come pick me up from school, right? So she tells the coworker, okay, yeah, pick up my son. He's blonde. He's this tall. Blah blah. Probably have a Nirvana t-shirt on. So the code is, this white smoke is starting to piss me off. And she's like, what? She's like, just trust me, okay? It's our code. He'll know that you're been sent by me 100%. So she pulls up to the school and she just sees this little blonde kid walking down the side of the school to go to the bus or the parking lot or something. She pulls up to him and rolls out her window and goes, hey, this white smoke is starting to piss me off. And this kid just turns and looks at him horrified. And she goes, oh no, oh no. And she just drove away. Oh man. So yeah, we got a lot of mileage out of that one Beavis and Butthead episode. Let me tell you. So yeah, Beavis and Butthead's got a special place in my heart for numerous reasons. But yeah, my mom and I, we have the white smoke gag. Never forget that.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Oh God, that's the thing, right? This, you know, you could say the same thing with a lot of other shows, right? And I'm not talking about animated shows, because I'm not sure, because I couldn't find it, right? I couldn't find it when I was doing all my research, but this had to have been inspired by things like The Young Ones. You know, The Young Ones, if you've not seen it, if you haven't heard what The Young Ones is, The Young Ones is a British TV show, and it's kind of, it's a comedy, but it was done as like a variety show, right? So every week they had a musical act on, and every other scene was either, you know, guys trying to pick up women and failing spectacularly.
Johnny Bravo style?
Yeah, slapstick violence.
Or Pepe Le Pew style, where he
more Johnny Bravo style.
Just openly sexually assaults them and then wonders what happened.
Yeah. I mean...
Okay, Bravo was just all talk. He was just a little mouthy.
But they'd have slapstick violence, and like when I say slapstick violence, I mean violent slapstick, right? Not slapstick violence as it, like they would literally take full-on cast iron skillets and smack each other about the head with them, with the comic sound effect that comes in with it, the actual dong, right? And you know, but it was all centered around music. It was all centered around the main characters were a sociology student, a hippie, a shady kind of mobster type deal, and an anarchist doctor student.
Okay.
Right. And
I have to check this out now. It sounds pretty crazy.
It's really good. Unfortunately, it's really, really dated in terms of its jokes. Because The Young Ones was the 80s, and you know it's got like lots of Thatcher references and you know all the things that were going on at the time. But if you take the references out of it, I think that The Young Ones might have inspired Beavis and Butthead to an extent.
No,
because it's
Max
got that same style.
Max Headroom's the coolest, and he will always be the coolest. This is 1986.
Yes, we are going to. Okay.
Yeah, that guy was a trip. Yeah, they kind of pioneered glitching though, because that's kind of like the new thing now.
Yeah. I think,
isn't that crazy?
Right. I think that's the thing though. MTV gets a lot of stick these days for its goofy reality crap and stuff like that. But they did pioneer a lot.
They really did. And during that time, they absolutely did. And, you know, this is one of the things that they pioneered, for sure, right here, that they were part of, you know?
This was the first MTV show that wasn't strictly all music. Now, it did have a lot of, you know, it did have a lot of music in there, but this was the first thing that was designed that wasn't specifically music. It had music in it, but it wasn't, you know,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when we look at the notes, I mean, the music review took up, nearly half the episode. So it still had a basis, but it had an actual narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm reading that off the notes. I mean, you could call it a narrative.
Yeah.
But it's really like just shenanigans, like,
definite shenaniganery.
malfeasance, but yeah, the narrative portion for the sake of argument.
Yeah, that's the only way I could... The story segment just sounds even classier.
Yeah, right.
Gather around, children. I'm going to tell you a story about two gentlemen by the name of Beavis and Butthead.
Butthead, yeah.
Butthead.
It's an absolutely incredible story about Mike Judge, about this whole the way it came about. I mean, it's really something.
Oh yeah, Mike Judge, man. He's a Texas boy. I didn't know he was that. I mean, I know King of the Hill was like based in a Dallas suburb and
Arlen.
A mock Dallas suburb.
Yeah.
I think it's based on Arlington, I think. But I mean, I didn't realize he was that much in Texas. I didn't realize he was raised in Texas. Because he's from New Mexico and born in Ecuador. But I guess
That's I didn't mean to cut you up, but that blew my mind. I was reading over the notes earlier while my wife was cooking dinner and jotting some stuff down. I was like, Mike Judge was born in Ecuador? She's like, what? I'm like, I know.
I think he's as I think he's as Ecuadorian as if a cat is born in a tree, it's a bird. I just think his folks happen to be, and I think he touched upon that in one of the King of the Hill episodes where Hank Hill is a proud Texan with a Texas dad and a Texas mom, but he was born in New York.
Gotcha. Okay.
But he's not a New York guy. He's a Texan man.
So he's what was that salsa company that was always like New York City? He was like that version of the salsa. Hank Hill is that guy.
But like he was a computer programmer and I don't want to say failed musician, but he was a traveling musician. He didn't have a steady band or a steady act or whatever. He was
kind
just
of a nomad.
Yeah, he was a sideman for hire wherever you wanted him. But in the early 90s, he took up animation. And then he produced a short animated film called Office Space. Not to be confused with the movie Office Space, which he did a few years later.
I was going to say, he directed or wrote that one, didn't he?
Yeah.
I can't remember which one it was.
It was an expansion on what he did here.
Okay. Figured. Okay, cool.
Comedy Central picked it up. Thought it was fantastic, and so he was going around all the Viacom places, and one of them's MTV, and he did a short with two teenagers called Frog Baseball, which is the pilot episode of Beavis and Butthead, which is essentially the two guys playing baseball with frogs.
Right.
Now this doesn't playing baseball with frogs. That doesn't sound hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious when the fact they start beating each other with the baseball bats because they can't hit the frogs.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and looking back on it. It looks pretty crude.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, but I mean the first attempt, it's even the Simpsons looked funky in the very beginning.
It looks better than the original Simpsons stuff. The Tracy Ullman Simpsons.
Yeah, or what was the other the one with the wavy lines, the one I was talking about a few episodes back. It was like breathing all the time. So anything's better than that. It was definitely better than that.
Definitely. And I mean, you gotta love Mike Judge, right? Because
oh yeah.
Aside from being talented, and aside from being creative, and aside from being funny, he developed the vast majority of this stuff.
He did almost all of the male voices as well.
He did all the male voices. He directed the show, and he wrote the majority of the scripts. I mean,
it's incredible, man.
I mean, look, I've been doing this little audio-only podcast with a couple of videos every now and then, right? And I'm voice and blah 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 blah. This is exhausting.
Yeah, it's
I can't imagine how he would do this.
To deal with like writing, scripting, directing, animation, to have all those other things, and then to do it 222 times.
Yeah, and then deal with the suits, because I mean,
legal.
He was, yeah, I mean, oh good lord, I'd hate to see the legal bill for this show.
Yeah, man. South Park. It's like South Park. I'm sure they probably got down to a science by now.
Oh yeah, sure. But the thing is with South Park is that they had two guys doing it, so it half the workload. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and a lot of the core characters were voiced by different people.
Yes, they did have a lot of help. But do you know Ike was never voiced by the same person twice?
No, I did not know.
Never.
I thought it was his daughter.
No, because what they actually touched on in an interview. Kids only talk like that for a very specific time in their life. So what they do is they put out a casting call for a kid right around that age,
and they just
it's like a year and 3/4 or something like that. So a very specific time. So they just put out a casting call and find a kid that age, and they record him saying some funny stuff and then throw it on there. They probably have a bank by now, but that's what they did. They said they couldn't stay with the same kid because they needed to stay. So they would just find one that was similar and just boom, re-record.
And that, kids, is why females play pre-teen males in cartoons.
Yep.
Because you can't keep, once a kid hits 12 or 13, and they go from talking like this to talking like this, you can't really, 10-year-old Bart Simpson wouldn't work,
Oh, that, yeah. Did you see The Simpsons where it was like a cutaway where Homer is singing in the choir, he's singing a solo, and his dad's like, "That boy's gonna make me $1 million." And then as soon as he says that, yeah, he's dead. So good.
Oh, Grandpa, you old fool. So after he developed all this, right, he developed the show Beavis and Butthead as we know. Beavis and Butthead are a pair of high school teens who are dim-witted, sexually obsessed metalheads who have no adult supervision and no self-control. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. And this is what I always wondered. Are the parents, like, gone? Like, literally? Or are they just aloof? Are they partying somewhere? Like, well, yeah, I mean, there's no evidence of them ever being around. So I'm thinking the former, honestly.
Well,
they're just not there.
It's heavily implied. Heavily implied. Hang on, let me make sure I got the right guy, because for the longest time I couldn't tell them apart, and even now I still can't tell them apart. It's a curse of mine, because it's just like dude and laughing all the time. Their names always I'd always get them confused. But it is highly implied that Butthead's mother is a prostitute.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we're not talking a streetwalker. We're talking about a house one. The one who calls the guys in, uses the bedroom. Okay. I don't want to say lazy, because that's deeply offensive. But the one who has people come to her rather than her trying to find people. That's the implication. Right. So all this is going on.
Todd coming out of there or something.
Yeah. So it's heavily implied that's Butthead's mom. Beavis' mom, no idea.
Well, we found out about their dads, actually, in Do America. I completely forgot about that. I mean, I guess they didn't come out and say it, but I mean...
It's heavily implied.
Well, I think there's also some pretty good empirical evidence and some pretty heavy context clues to back all that up as well. So,
well, not only that, it implies that Beavis and Butthead are half-brothers in the movie.
Yeah, because they... Okay, yeah.
Beavis, they say the guy whose Beavis is dead is the only one that hit it.
Okay.
Their words, not mine. Now, for everybody listening, I know I put a disclaimer at the front of the episode, but I'm going to give it again real quick. We are going to be using language that was used in the 90s by Beavis and Butthead to get into the spirit of the episode. We don't mean any offense when we say some of the things, when we say chicks and stuff like that. Okay, I just want to make that clear. I know times have changed from the 90s and so on and so forth, but this is our way of trying to explain the show. So using the language that we are using, it's not meant to be offensive. It's just meant to be the easiest way to explain it, where people who've watched the show will understand what we're talking about. So that that way we don't upset anybody. I'm not trying to upset anybody. I promise you.
No, it's completely derivative to that particular snapshot in time.
Yeah, you can't talk about Beavis and Butthead without using double meaning, double innuendo stuff, because that was a lot of what the humor was based off of. You know, I mean, I'll nail my flag to this mast. He said nail. You know, and that was it. You know, I mean, so like I said, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Apologize if you're offended. Apologize if you're not offended. But this is the only way we can talk about this without being disingenuous.
You know what we need to do? We need to get a banjo. We need to do a Beavis and Butthead style disclaimer in the beginning.
I might look for that. Actually. Anyway, moving on.
I'm looking up the disclaimer. Oh, I'm already playing it through my head. Okay,
it's in the notes. It's in the notes.
Oh, is it really? Awesome.
Yes. Because there's a reason why the disclaimer showed up, which we'll get to here in a little while. So the story, right? The story of Beavis and Butthead is they're in a town called Highland, Texas, which is, again, a fictional suburb of Dallas.
Any town, USA, essentially. It might as well be. It doesn't necessarily show much regionalism. I mean, the only person that shows regionalism is the neighbor.
Yeah.
To be fair, everybody else, I mean, Van Driesen sounds like a northerner. Everybody else sounds pretty Midwestern. So that's interesting that they decided that was Texas, because there's some, but the core characters don't appear to be very Texan, so to speak.
Well, the thing is, though, Dallas is is like huge, right?
It's a lot more metropolitan than I'd give it credit for, probably.
Yeah, so it's not, when people think of Texas, they think of the big hats and the belt buckles and the yeehaw, right?
Yeah,
which is really, really bad stereotype, but you don't see that in Dallas.
Yeah,
the TV show, yes.
I haven't spent a lot of time there. I mean, I usually go there and fly out or go to a concert. So, I mean, that's fair. I mean, but you know, Texas, it's got its own presence about it. Its own.
The United States of Texas.
Yeah, it makes its own statement. You know, like the everything's bigger in Texas thing. You know, it's just one of those things. There
were no Texan stereotypes. I think that's what we're dancing around.
Yeah, there really wasn't, and it wasn't a lot of regionalism, like stuff that pointed to the fact that they were in Texas. I mean, but I mean,
it just pointed out a couple times, hey, we're in Texas.
Sure, yeah,
and I think that's a lot with a lot of things too, with the exception of maybe something like Friends, for example, or some shows in the UK that were specific. Once you watch the show, you kind of forget where they're located at, unless they explicitly shove that down your throat. Because like Friends Friends, we're in New York, and like,
Central Park, get it? Central Park, it's like Central Park, but we changed it to the E because you're drinking coffee and you'll be perky, get it?
Like, right. I mean, I watched Law and Order, and it's all based in New York. But you really can't tell it's stereotypical New York because they don't shove that part down your throat. Aside from NYPD every now and then, you know?
Yeah.
So I think the fact that it was in Texas and nobody really got that fact was a good thing.
Yeah, well, and then again, it was being done by a Texan.
Yeah. So he knows.
He would know. So yeah, I totally trust that, honestly, yeah.
So each episode of the show, right, was there were only 4 stories ever told in Beavis and Butthead, right? I mean, okay, there were different ways of doing it, but the basic 4 stories were they would get into shenanigans where they would either hurt themselves, or get hurt, they would hurt others, they would inconvenience other people, or they would be hurt by other people. And sometimes it would have a mixture of those. Yeah. And sometimes it wouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes it would be all 4 of those, or it'd be combinations of them, which I thought was kind of interesting. Because a lot of times it would be, it would just snowball at the end and turn into all 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
But it was only those 4.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I mean, that I guess that was the other thing that made it good too, is that you kind of knew what to expect,
right?
But you didn't know which one you were getting.
I mean, the worst thing that they were going to do is damage property.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, really, the rest of it was just like unpleasantries or inconveniences. Yeah, exactly.
And the story would be told like in 2 or 3 parts, and it'd be split up by a music review, which we'll get to here in a second. And basically at the end of the story, the town or the school would be in complete and utter chaos because of what they did.
Yeah, and they would just be like, "This sucks. Let's go."
They didn't realize they were the ones that caused. It's kind of like SpongeBob and Patrick. You know, they didn't realize they caused everything. It was just, why is that building on fire?
Let me ask you this: do you think it's because they're naive, or because they don't care?
I don't think it's naivete, so to speak. I think it's genuine obliviousness,
not selfishness, self-centeredness, but more like lack of awareness.
Yeah, like they didn't realize that their actions would cause something. They don't. Okay, a lot of the times where the town was in chaos, everything that they did wasn't malicious. It was just they were oblivious that they were doing something they shouldn't have been doing. Yeah,
because they only cared about like getting boobs rubbed on their shoulder during a haircut, or like drinking fake beer with a straw. Like they didn't care what they had to do to get to that goal. Like
yeah, and it was single-minded, but I don't think what they were going for when it was going wrong, they weren't. It wasn't malicious. It was just basically, as you said, to get to their goal, and they didn't realize what they were doing. So it was definitely obliviousness.
Okay. I think that's extremely fair, honestly, because I don't think they're naive. Because I think naivety implies that a certain amount of ignorance, a lack of culpability, innocence, if you will. Yeah, but for them, I think it's ignoramus. It's just stupidity.
Yes, and you can't fix stupid.
Yeah, no, it's not that they have the skills to obtain the knowledge and choose not to. They don't have the skills to obtain the knowledge, and they're not willing to go out of their way to try to.
Exactly. So they didn't know any better, and they didn't care. But I don't think it was explicitly malicious.
No, and that's why that my point of naivety came in, because that sort of innocence kind of ties back into that, if you will.
It's a naive ignorance.
Yeah, it's bliss, right?
Yes, that's the word.
Ignorance is bliss, right?
And they were blissful.
Explicitly, yeah.
So in between these little story segments, they had like what they called a music review, and they'd usually watch 2 or 3 music videos in a row and then go back to the story. And this was obviously, as we mentioned, back when MTV was a music channel, music television. That's what MTV stands for, kids, if you don't know already. Basically, they would be the 2 of them sitting on the couch watching a music video and critiquing it. Critiquing the song, critiquing the video, whatever. And these were conversations that Mike Judge and somebody else would have, and he'd kind of record, them going over the video, right? Like you mentioned, the Whitesnake video. All right, so I'm pretty sure Mike Judge, or the guy he was watching them with, said, what did he say?
Well, this white smoke is starting to piss me off.
Yeah. So he basically got all the best lines and then kind of ad-libbed again in character with some of these one-liners and comments and stuff like that. This is the weird part about it, right? Beavis and Butthead, as we just spent a couple of minutes talking about, were dumb. They were dumber than a bag of rocks, as dumb as a bag of hammers. But in these music segments, they would be, I wouldn't say intelligent, but
they were in their element.
Yeah, so it's like their IQs increased 100 points when they were watching a music video. They were witty, they were smart-arsy as opposed to dumb-arsy. It was kind of like. There was a podcast, video podcast that was done by Rob Paulson, who was the voice of Yakko and Pinky from Pinky and the Brain.
His name is Robert Paulson.
Yes, legend, absolute god in the voice talent world. I mean, was doing voiceover work with throat cancer. An amazing guy, right? And he was doing a podcast, and he'd interview another voice talent, right? And then he would grab a script from a movie, and he had Nancy Cartwright and himself, and they were doing Silence of the Lambs, the first scene, Hello Clarice, right? That scene.
Right.
As the Brain and Ralphie. I don't think I like this. Just.
Oh, wow.
And completely in character, but the script was, was on. And I think that's kind of what this is similarity about. It was proper criticism, but using Beavis and Butthead as the vehicle.
Yeah. It definitely brought out you got more out of the characters. Yeah, I think they I'll go back to my original statement. I really think they were in their element. That's where they were comfortable. That's what they liked. That's what they wanted to do, And
they listen, as you mentioned, they listen to all kinds of music, and in the earlier seasons they kind of grouped the same style of music to every episode, but as the seasons went on, I mean, they reviewed Tom Jones and Rednecks in one episode.
Yeah, because a lot of times they would do just like a snippet of a video and change it.
Yeah.
Or they just watch part of a video. They edit down a lot of the videos for that.
And they'd get angry, and they'd get angry at stuff they hated. They get headbanging at stuff they loved.
Yeah.
So that's what made it unique, because it definitely played to the ADD generation, as somebody said. Because you had this, then this, then this, then this, and then this, and this. Even though it was the same thing, and you could watch it linearly, it was still there. So, what is Beavis and Butthead? As we mentioned, it's a cartoon. So, who are the stars of Beavis and Butthead? Because this is the first time we're doing a television one, and so this one's a little different than how we do it normal. But in Beavis and Butthead, we start off with Butthead, and this. I didn't know this. I honestly didn't know this. Was written as he was going to be the quote-unquote star of the show.
He kind of seemed... I mean, I can kind of see that now. I didn't really think about it before, but I mean, that makes sense, because he was always kind of like the ringleader of the two, if you will.
I mean, he was the leader, but I mean, he's probably the worst best friend anybody could ever have.
Yeah, I mean, but that's one of the reasons they work out, because they're both similarly awful. They're both selfish and kind of aloof and a little crazy.
Well, he was
kind of dumb.
he was physically and mentally abusive of Beavis the whole time. Now looking back, we understand these things a little better than we did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, he used to beat him with objects in his fists with no comeuppance. His only goal in life is to score with chicks. That's it. That's all he wants to do in life. Doesn't want to work, doesn't want to do anything. He just wants to get laid, and that's it. I'd respect him a little more as if score with chicks and drink, or score with chicks and party. No, it's just score with chicks. That's it.
Right.
So he's the one with the deeper voice.
He's the original basic bro.
Oh yeah, he's beyond basic.
Yeah,
he doesn't even want to work.
Basic bro.
He doesn't want to work out. Doesn't have the car.
Nope.
He thinks he is like this cool, calm, collected, suave, sophisticated. In the words of Jason Lee, he thought he was a smooth, suave, sophisticated motherfucker, and
right.
He's basically as dumb as a bag of rocks.
Yeah, maybe, man. But bag of rocks, might actually have a slight edge on him. Honestly. But.
What's your IQ? I what? Yeah. He believes he's better than everyone else except Todd, because he worships the ground Todd walks on, which is ironic because Todd can't stand him.
Yeah. Beavis too. Beavis is Beavis is gonna think anything that Butthead thinks is cool is cool. For the most part, there are a few exceptions with other things, but that's going to be covered later on. So. Well,
the thing is about Beavis. Let's jump to Beavis real quick. He was the best friend. He was originally written to be the sidekick, but he became equal. Because the popularity, and then he became like this loose cannon who could not be controlled by anything, not even his own mind.
Right.
He's a pyromaniac, and that he honestly hates Butthead. Can't stand him. The only reason he hangs out with him is because he's got no other friends except maybe Stuart,
Yeah.
And
Pretty much, yeah.
But when he's getting his ass whipped or getting, abused, he just takes it until he doesn't take it. And then when he doesn't take it, he completely and utterly, just wipes the floor with Butthead.
Yeah. He has a breaking point.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it takes a good bit to get there, but yeah, definitely has it.
And, okay, they're both not intelligent, but he's the smarter of the two.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just from, observing them. They're both definitely dumb as hell, but he's a little less dumb.
He is a pyromaniac. Fire.
Yeah, he kind of is.
He that led to some problems, which we'll get to here in a little while.
Yeah.
But he's a big fan of heavy metal. But he if he likes a song, he likes a song, and he doesn't care whether Butthead likes it or not.
Right.
So and they've actually gotten into fights in the review segment, physical fights because of that.
Yeah.
But when he gets highly, highly caffeinated and highly worked up and stimulated, he turns in to the Great Cornholio. Which
are you threatening me? Do not anger my bunghole. Titi-kaka. That's the funniest when he just puts his arms up and he's like
I showed cornholio to my 19-year-old. Nothing, not a peep, not a titter, nothing. And I'm thinking
it's generational, man.
I'm thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? This stuff's hilarious. I guarantee you had this experience at your school too, even though we were thousands of miles away and everything at the time. I guarantee you, after the movie Beavis and Butthead Do America, guarantee you one kid at your school would walk around with something over his head, with his arms out, going, "Hey, I am the great I see."
Yeah. It was probably me. It was probably me, man. That sounds like something I would have done in about 7th grade. I think it was when that came out. Yeah.
But what's the? I think the funniest part about it is, I don't know. We talk about inspirations, direct or indirect, right? I don't know whether or not he was inspired or inspired early Jay from Jay and Silent Bob.
Huh. Okay.
Because you can kind of see it. They got the same humor, the same aggression, the same, Okay, Jay doesn't pull a t-shirt over his head and go, but I mean, the whole, the antics and shenanigans that they get up to.
Yeah, he's probably a little bit smarter than him, but yeah, I could see that, definitely.
And the accent, too. He goes from talking like an American into a Spanish accent, which is just...
Yeah, that was some of the best ones for sure. And then like a werewolf, he just transforms back to Beavis like nothing ever happened.
And he has no idea what went on, why people are looking at him stupid.
Yeah.
All right, moving. Oh god. Then neighbor is a mildly senile. And I mean, just the prototype to Hank Hill, Mr. Tom Anderson.
Yep, he was basically just a rough version of him.
It was, I think, the spirit of Tom Anderson split in two and became Bill and Hank.
Okay.
But
because he was real close to the same voice. I knew when King of the Hill came out and I heard that voice, I was like, okay, yeah, that's definitely derived from that Mr. Anderson character on Beavis and Butthead.
And you look at Bill from King of the Hill, and you just see the washed up loser that so Anderson was.
Well, maybe Boomhauer is like post Beavis.
Yeah. And Dale is post Butthead. Oh man, that's it. That's who they are. Wow.
Mind blown.
And for more conspiracy theories. But But he would always start off, every time he would see the boys, he would always start off with, "Hey,
weren't you them boys who
run off with my lawnmower?
Done whacked off with my lawnmower?" You know, it's funny. He kind of sounds like my late grandfather. He very, very heavily resembles that.
I'll tell you what.
I'll tell you what. Yeah, he lived in Texas and Louisiana for a long time, so he's got that kind of that roving, country kind of accent.
But I mean, what a way to introduce yourself. Hey, weren't you the two that whacked off in my tool shed? I mean, just like, And the thing is, they would always deny it, and he would believe them. Like, did you?
Those were like other guys.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd always be like a really, really flimsy excuse. And and in the notes here it says that he shows all shades of senility, like forgetting things.
Oh yeah.
So that's an interesting point. It's not something that Ed was able to understand.
I think it's because he's been neighbors to one of the boys for so long, and acts like he's never met them before.
Yeah, I mean that's extremely, extremely fair evidence. Yeah, for sure.
And he thinks that they're Asian, although he says a much more offensive word than we would. Every time it's like, okay, that hasn't aged well.
No.
But he's a vet of World War II and Korea. So, and this is the thing, right? This is the thing. Tom Anderson was going to get his own TV show. And he was going to have a son called Hank. Okay? So King of the Hill was originally written as a vehicle for Tom Anderson. Right?
Okay.
But when Fox and MTV couldn't agree to the rights, because Tom was supposed to be Hank's father. Korean War vet, World War II vet.
Okay.
They took my shins.
He would have been Cotton, basically. Yeah, okay.
But
Cotton's kind of hilarious. I kind of enjoyed him.
So when they couldn't do that, they rewrote Hank, and then they gave his appearance to Bill. They gave his voice to Hank, and then they wrote a whole new dad for him, and then focused the remaining scripts around Hank as opposed to Tom.
I mean, and I was wondering about that. I mean, it makes sense though, especially if you couldn't get the rights working correctly. But I mean, I thought Hank was much more interesting than Tom Anderson would have been.
And I think Cotton Hill is more interesting too.
Yeah, he's always dating some or married to some way younger broad, and he's just he's rowdy and full of energy. Yeah, he's a trip. It's fun to watch.
And didn't you say he was occasionally stepping out of Butthead's mom's room?
Oh no, that was Todd.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I thought.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought I'd seen Todd. There was an episode where he came out of his mom's bedroom, shut the door, and then broke a beer bottle on the wall and left. Just something crazy like that. Maybe I'm misremembering, but another context clue that Butthead's mom was a lady of the evening.
Yes, I would say lady of the night, but people go out earlier than I do.
Yeah. Right.
The next major character is Daria. And I can't pronounce her last name, and I'm not even going to attempt to try.
Morgendorfer.
There you go. Very good. Because for everybody who listened to the Lion King episode, you realize how many of those animal names I butchered, so I'm not even going to try this time. She was a student at the school. She is not completely and utterly detesting the lads. Maybe 85% detestable.
She's usually trying to help them or offer some advice and just gets insulted.
Not all the time. I mean, okay, they respect her as much as they could possibly respect somebody.
More than most, but still, it's still not up to a normal person's standards.
They respect them as much as Beavis and Butthead could respect somebody who's a chick.
And it says, and you have a note right here that they called her diarrhea behind their back. They also did call that to her face several times.
I did not know that.
There was a couple times where they chanted it as she walked away.
Diarrhea.
Beavis he did a cha 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 diarrhea cha 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 diarrhea cha cha cha. It was something to do with a dance. I was struggling to try to find some clips. Man, I need to just get some DVD action going again.
Yeah, I know. Same here. I looked on all the streaming stuff, and it's not on there, which is understandable, I guess. But I mean, if YouTube has a lot on there.
Yeah, I did get to see a little bit of it, but it's just so hard to like pinpoint stuff exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So just kind of like grab what you can and watch it. But this one was cool. This character, kind of interesting that this was the character that got the spinoff.
Yeah.
Because she was kind of decidedly bland in some respects, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, they when you're given a bit part in a show with like over the top characters, somebody kind of would seem generic and bland and boring and stuff like that.
It was just so dry.
Yeah.
That it was the lacklusterness of it was part of the shtick. It was part of the delivery.
Yeah. And I think them,
if you will,
and they tightened her up completely when they did her own show. And
do you know who did her voice? Do you remember?
Her voice was, if I'm remembering right,
was it Janine Garofalo? Because if it wasn't, that would have been perfect.
Janine Garofalo probably would have been the perfect area, but
because she's like queen dry humor.
Yeah, I think it was.
Truth About Cats and Dogs. If you haven't seen that movie,
yes, I've seen that movie.
And that's her and Uma Thurman. It's kind of a chick flick, but it's a really good movie. And she is absolutely like sarcastic up to level 1000. So if you want to see some good 90s dry humor, that's definitely a good one. Check out.
Well, ironically, it wasn't.
It could have been.
It was actually a lady by the name of Tracy Grandstaff.
Huh.
Now I've got her pulled up on IMDb right now. All right.
Right.
And I'm looking at her credits, and she has no credits aside from Daria. She wrote for the Tom Green Show, and did some writing for Nickelodeon briefly, and has been a consultant. But I mean, she literally has only done Beavis and Butthead and Daria, and she was the voice of Daria in Beavis and Butthead. Because I know. Oh,
so for both her series and Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes for they do that. They do if they give a character a spin-off show, they do change the voice for some odd reason.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes they at least they used to in the 90s. But the fact that that's her only credit, man. Which is a shame because, it's a damn good voice.
Yeah, I mean, it fit perfectly what they were going for. That delivery was absolutely spot on. Yeah, Janine Garofalo was actually kind of a big deal during that time. That might have cost them a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, definitely. More than MTV could.
I didn't think about that.
More than MTV could afford, definitely.
But yeah, she would have commanded a lot more.
I mean, she doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, so, that's how... however, she's cashing them checks right now.
I'm sure she's got some kind of residuals off that still.
Because Daria has built up a kind of college white girl following.
Yeah, she was an icon for sure in the 90s. A lot of women liked that she spoke her mind, and if something was wrong, she would point it out, and she would point it out reasonably and logically and with facts and
she wasn't
evidence.
She wasn't airheaded, which a lot of female characters were around that time.
She was strong, smart, independent, dedicated, loyal. Yeah, I mean, she was absolutely an extremely positive role model.
And like I said,
and she was also hilarious.
A kind of bland character in Beavis and Butthead, but again, it's hard to stand out in Beavis and Butthead with those two as the main kind of.
Well, that's true. Yeah, she was very bland in that, but they developed her really well in her own series. So I'm just shocked that they took that risk from that example, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
the next person we're talking about is Van Dresden. Or Dreisen. I can never pronounce it right. Again, my horrible...
Van Driesen.
Van Driesen.
Yeah.
The hippie teacher.
Okay, boys. Today we are going to...
Very, very...
My favorite...
Go ahead.
My favorite one was when they went camping. It was Van Driesen, Stewart, and then Beavis and Butthead, and they're like watching Stewart and Van Driesen try to put the tent together.
Yeah,
and there's just all these like sexual puns, and they're just sitting in the bush, just watching them laughing. He's like, "Here, grab this pole, Stewart." And he's like, "Stick it in the hole, Stewart. Harder." So yeah, Van Driesen, absolutely hilarious. He's kind of the we haven't got to him yet, but to me, he's kind of the antithesis of Buzzcut.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the open-minded, you know. We don't punish in here. We talk about our feelings, you know, and that kind of just real transcendental kind of, you know.
Well, see, hang on, let me look up something real quick, because I know this is going to sound weird, but you'll understand what I mean here in just a second. This was in 1993, right? And so, hang on. This came out in 1993, and he's described as a hippie, right? And he is a hippie, but
right.
This, I mean, you got to understand, this is not even 20 years after Vietnam. Because Vietnam now was like, you know, is close to 45 years ago, right? From where we are sitting.
Yeah, easily.
So, Buzzcut and Van Driesen, again, I apologize if I busted, but completely and utterly butchered it. But
no, you got it.
They came from, they'd be what, early 40s at the time. The characters were.
Yeah, late 30s, early 40s, somewhere.
Which is around about the time, like 20 years from Vietnam.
Right.
So they could have been, you know, Van Driesen could have been like one of the protesters, that, you know, the anti-war protesters, and Buzzcut could have been a vet, you know, which is why they have completely and utterly different opposite end thinking, because
different perspectives. Yeah.
Because it, you know, I'm not necessarily saying it is a Vietnam thing, but I mean it's close enough. I mean, because when this was made, this was as far out of Vietnam as we are with Afghanistan.
Yeah, or it could have been Iraq War too, because that was just a few years earlier. But yeah, he always gave me a drill sergeant vibe, Buzzcut.
Yeah. Oh,
So yeah, I wouldn't doubt if he had like intense military training.
But I think one thing that Van Driesen did inspire was Mr. Mackey.
Okay. Yeah, he liked to use that word a lot.
Which kind of we'll get to in a minute, which kind of worries me a little bit, and I'll explain later. We mentioned him a couple of times, Stewart. He's the only person the boys seem friendly with, although they completely and utterly use him completely.
He's like a privileged version. He's like a privileged, non-dumb version of Beavis and Butthead, because he has similar interests. He's around similar age, but his home situation is a little bit better.
A little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, let's be straight up here. Every home has its issues of some sort. None are perfect, but let's Beavis and Butthead's like they're like pretty much anybody's situation is better than that. Pretty much.
True. It's
I mean,
Stewart's family. Stewart's family was, you know, on the outside it was the perfect American family, but on the inside, Dad was a very, very angry man. Yeah,
it was all about appearances.
Yeah. So
just making it look right, you know.
So being neglected and left alone all the time sometimes can be better than, you know, constantly getting screamed at. On the one hand,
yeah, perhaps,
you know. But he idolizes the boys and kind of he's the patsy. He takes the fall for everything that Beavis and Butthead do to him, and kind of accepts it. It goes with the territory, you know.
Yeah.
They use Stewart's password at school to look at porn, and he gets the rap for it, you know.
Yeah, he's the what's the scapegoat?
Yeah, I mean the
constant scapegoat.
They bring him to he brings them to his house, and they completely destroy it, you know, break furniture and everything like that. But here's the thing, right? Beavis likes Stewart. Because Beavis doesn't have a personality. And what I mean by that is, let me rephrase that. Beavis is a very, 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 he needs, he's a follower, right? But not just like, somebody who, he's an actual follower. He gravitates towards people who will, who I'm going to say stronger than him, but, who are more outgoing than him, right?
Yeah, so you kind of latch onto him.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's the complete opposite of Butthead, right? And in the episode It's a Miserable Life, it shows what would happen if Butthead wasn't born, and Stewart and Beavis were actually, again, they were the best friends, but instead of being a lazy pyromaniac, he would be like, the assistant when Stewart would do charity work or volunteer work, or, you know what I mean?
Like it's wholly different trajectory, like a positive arc, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, that kind of is negated by the fact that Butthead would completely ruin everything. But, I mean,
Sure. Well, he wouldn't even be in that situation to begin with, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So, then you got McVicker, Principal McVicker. He is...
You boys! He was like... Was he like... Is his head about to explode, or was he constipated? Like, what was that dude's deal, man?
He is...
Jeez.
This character right here, right, kind of was the first of its kind. I mean, you'd seen it in books, right, but everybody thought of it as fiction. But and used like kind of anthropomorphically with, but never had a high school principal being this abusive and aggressive publicly up until that point.
Not since Mr. Belding. No, just kidding. He was actually super cool for all the maniacal crap he had to put up from Zach Morris,
who's trash.
Yeah, that series is so funny. They release a new one every Friday, and that is the best part of my week.
But I mean,
that's so funny.
I mean, principals up until that point, or teachers up until that point, if they were bad teachers, they were buffoons and stupid and dim-witted, and dumb,
incompetent. Yeah.
But this was the first aggressive, angry, do it or fucking spank you principal out there.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like he was about to blow his top 24/7. Like he was on the edge of an emotional and mental breakdown.
He hits kids.
Like, yeah, I mean, obviously, or either that or Beavis and Butthead just ruined every, the idea of that for him. I don't know. But yeah, he's not having a good time. I'll tell you that much.
Well, that, and I mean, he was seen, he was a dick, and he was seen as the abusive leader, and he was written as that. Because and he is on medicine for an unnamed illness that involves seizures and blackouts, and I think in the last episode he actually has a heart attack and dies.
Oh, that's sweet.
We briefly touched on Buzzcut. He's a former Marine and Vietnam vet. Vietnam vet. God, I can't talk tonight. But Sergeant Gunny from Full Metal Jacket, that's who he was based off of.
Yeah, 100%. No arguments there, yeah.
I mean, he's a sadistic coach. He's the math and substitute teacher. He hates everybody but McVicker because he's a superior, which, he's a former Marine. He's a sergeant, so he needs somebody to, somebody above him. He hates kids and sees most of them as weak, and he enjoys bullying them. What?
Yeah.
What was the football team?
Basically, yeah. I mean, he was just like, he thought he was going to war.
What was his homework for the football team one night? Go beat up a gifted kid.
Yep. He just wanted to. He thought he was running a military school or something. I think
he thought he was running boot camp, but what he was running was dodgeball.
Basically, yeah.
And then you got the Burger World manager, who's doesn't have a name aside from Burger World manager. I looked it up, could not find it. He's just known as Burger World manager. He's their boss.
Alrighty.
He's their boss at Burger World, and who constantly is pissed off at their shenaniganery. Then there's Todd, who's the bad boy of the school. And then there's Lolita, and you're going to have to pronounce that one for me because I can't do it.
Tanqueray.
Yes. The school bikes, who briefly dated the boys.
You call them Easy Rider.
Easy Rider. Again, listen to the disclaimer. So, those are the characters. What the show really did, I mean, first, okay, Beavis and Butthead, the first thing you think about is the laughs. Just the straight up, everything was like, all.
Yeah, it started and ended everything they did. Pretty much everything was a laugh.
There was one episode, I can't remember which one it was, but there was one scene where they started laughing, and it was a full 90 seconds of them laughing before they made their statement. I think it was something along of, can you just shut up? It was, and then just another minute of laughing. I mean, that was how they'd start a sentence. That's how they would end a sentence. Just just completely there. They were considered stupid beyond belief, and Mike Judge did that. Mike Judge wrote them as stupid in the story and kind of more intelligent in the review, simply because he wanted to differentiate between the two. He wanted to make sure that you could take them seriously as reviewers while watching them, get up to what they get up to.
Yeah, that was the only thing that they were kind of good at.
Yeah.
Literally.
The other thing that I mean we've touched upon is that their attitudes towards women, and the way they did it, they wrote their attitudes and mentality and everything like that in a way that was so over the top that nobody could believe anybody would act like that, when in reality it was just mocking people and not even going that over the top with it.
Yeah.
A lot of dudes in the 90s in Britain in particular thought they were lads and studs, and treated women worse than Beavis and Butthead treated women.
Wow.
Jeez. Yeah, I know, right? Basically put, they always backfire with their crude ways of talking to women, and they're just disgusting, and
they wouldn't even know what to do with that if they got the chance.
Yes, I mean
too, which is because there was a couple instances where they had the golden opportunity and they got scared. They literally didn't know what to do. They were so overwhelmed by the situation. They all they could do is just revel in how they almost scored.
Yeah. It's like they walk into a brothel with a fistful of thousands and walk out sucking their thumb.
Yeah, exactly.
Ironically, right? Beavis doesn't really is interested, but not as interested, right?
Beavis is just interested in whatever Butthead's interested in. So, it doesn't matter if it's beer or nachos or
women,
the heavy metal. It doesn't matter if Butthead likes it. If Butthead's about it, he's gonna be about it.
But the thing is, what's ironic is while Beavis isn't as into the scoring with chicks as Butthead is, whenever somebody's attracted to either of the guys, they're attracted to Beavis.
Yeah, it's, blonde,
I mean, but
I guess that makes sense.
But they also misread the signals. Like they went to an abortion rally to pick up chicks. I mean, just
Yeah. And that's you mentioned Jay.
Yeah.
Jay Silent Bob.
That's Dogma.
Where were they in Dogma?
Yeah,
Exactly.
They were trying to pick up chicks at an abortion clinic.
To me, the funniest scene in that entire movie is when they leave in the car, and you just hear the engine.
What gear are you in?
Gear.
How was that?
It's like, how did you even get that into out? How did you even get that car moving? You don't know how to operate a clutch. You're screwed, buddy.
I never drove a standard. What the fuck is shifting?
Yeah, right.
The other thing that would happen to them is the fact that there was a South Carolina Democrat, right, who was talking about this in the Congress one day, talking about how this was a scourge and shouldn't be shown to children, and he referred to them as Buffcoat and Beaver. So what Mike Judge did, because he's Mike Judge and he's awesome, he decided to, every time the boys met Tom Anderson, he would refer to them as Butthole and Joe, Buffcoat and Beaver, Penis and Butt Munch. Just he'd never get the names right, especially if
there was another one. There's another one too. I'm trying to remember it. Maybe I don't know. I think it was a Butthole and Beaver.
Butthole
it was
and
like
Beaver.
he started because I think Buffcoat and Butt Munch. A couple of those got switched around. But yeah, I like Buffcoat. That's
after
really
he
funny.
got them whacking off in his tool shed.
Yeah.
So, as I was going through this, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it, and a lot of the episodes in my head run together. The only one that stands out is the episode where they have to get a jock strap for PE, and they end up like with an eye patch each.
Yeah.
That's the only one I remember, right? The details specific of it.
Oh, dude.
So
I remember. I looked over all these. I remember all of them. I remember every single one of them.
all right, so I'm gonna give the episode. If you can give me a description of it, what you remember, that would be fantastic. Because, like I said, you have a better memory than I do because I can't pronounce anything. So,
I will do my best for sure. This basics. A lot of it's pretty basic because it's Beavis and Butthead.
I mean, because they didn't need to have deep plots because,
no,
like I said, with
it was all about the antics.
yeah, they only had 4 things that they did, and I think these episodes prove it. So the first one is Frog Baseball, which was the pilot episode.
Yeah.
They watch TV, they get bored, and after they try to set fire with insects and firecrackers, they spot a frog and decide to play baseball. And they end up hitting each other with the bats a few times, end up fighting,
Right.
and then eventually they hit a frog they hit the frog with the baseball bat. It explodes, and then they spot Mrs. Higgins' poodle.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean, that was the first one I ever saw. It was extremely shocking that they just went there immediately, but it definitely was a strong first offering. Showed that they were, ready to play.
Yeah,
if you will.
His gloves were off. Episode 1.
Yeah, it was. If you see this one, it's definitely the most rough and underproduced version. The second episode looked better than the first one, and I'm sure some of that might have been budgetary, time, etc. But nonetheless, yeah, it's definitely the nucleus of what was to come. But it was still character development and animations were still probably in the alpha stage, maybe beta stage, but they tightened it up really, really quick. And then by 4 or 5 episodes, you had the classic look of what you remember now.
They nailed it.
They did, yeah. Judge knew what he wanted, and he just kept carving it until it looked good,
Sweet. Next one is Manners Suck. The debut of Mr. Manners.
Yeah, this one I don't remember too much about, but it's just basically just another classic case of Beavis and Butthead, just saying stuff sucks. They don't ever want to try anything new. They want to eat nachos and watch cartoons or watch music videos and go to concerts. That's like all they. So everything else sucks. This sucks, like everything.
And
so
they end up in.
Obviously, Manners, they're not going to be cool with that at all.
He ends up in a fist fight with Van Driesen, which...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is ironic because, he's probably the biggest pacifist in the entire series.
The next one is Candy Sale. That one right there is...
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I can explain this one really well. I remember this one. Okay, so they have to sell a bunch of candy for it's either an assignment or fundraiser, some type of thing.
High school candy.
And yeah. So basically, they have these chocolate bars, and they're $1 a piece. So Beavis is like, "Hey," or Butthead's like, "Hey, you should buy one of these chocolate bars from me." And he's like, "Okay." So he gives him $1, and he gives him the chocolate bar, and then he's like, "Hey, you should buy one of those chocolate bars from me." He's like, "Okay." So he gives him that $1 back. And then they just keep eating the chocolate bars and giving the $1 back and forth to each other. And that's how they came up with $3. Because they sold a couple and then they traded $1 back and forth to each other. They just kept giving it doesn't work that way.
And this also ends up with Buzzcut and Manners in a fist fight. Manners was in like 4 episodes, and each one he ended up with a fist fight with someone because, we got to write something. Fight.
That's what would probably happen in real life, though. To be honest, if you did something that ignoramus to that, and then that be that, flippant or ignorant about it, Mr. Anderson's balls.
Yes, that's the next episode.
A lot of genitalia puns in that one, where he's like washing the balls. There's like a ball washer, and he puts them in there. And it's like this thing where you just like drop it down. It's like it spins them around and wets them, and he starts just pumping it up and down. He's just like, he's really, and then Mr. Anderson comes up behind him. Damn it, boy! And he goes, rah! And he pulls it up, and all the balls go like everywhere. It's very, very suggestive, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that was a really funny.
Tell you what, though, that was a good get rich quick scheme. Go to the golf course.
Yeah, I would say they did create a racket off of that, and ended up so they would steal his balls. Like he would hit one off, in the rough or in a bush. They would steal it, and they would take all the balls, wash them, and then wait for him outside of the pro shop, and then resell them the balls. Actually, kind of smart, really. I mean, it's it's scummy, but you got to give them for the intelligence factor in that,
which is a rare show of intelligence. Then you have the debut of the great Cornholio.
Yeah, you can't forget the great.
Not just Cornholio, he's the great Cornholio, because
yes,
would his son be Cornholio the Lesser?
Yeah.
Basic
Cornholio the Greater and Lesser.
Basically, the boys end up raiding Stewart's house for candy after a bad dinner, and then Cornholio is born.
Yeah, there was another one. I don't remember this one specifically. I mean, I do remember it, but I like all the details. But there was another one, meal at Stewart's house. They were over there early in the morning for some reason, and his mom gave them breakfast burritos, and they were all excited about it. It's like, yes, breakfast burritos, awesome. So they take a bite, and Butthead's like, ugh, and Beavis is like, mine has eggs in it. Like he didn't understand the concept of it. So yeah, I remember them ransacking the cabinets and like looking for, anything, quote unquote, real food. Because like I said, they're all about nachos and burritos and pizza and burgers.
The next one I'm looking at right here. The next one, right, was this Stewart's house gets completely and utterly trashed by a gentleman called Mr. Sachs. His name is Harry, right? Beavis and Butthead find the name in the phone book and basically prank call the shit out of his house, call him Harry Sachs the whole time. And I don't know why I'm laughing.
Wow. And that's Sachs, Sachs, just in case, so you can. It doesn't. Was it? Isn't there a company like Goldman Sachs?
Yeah.
Sachs, yeah. So like that same spelling. Yeah.
I'm 36 years old, nearly 37 years old, and I'm still laughing at Harry Sachs.
Oh, I was laughing at ad I was working on the other day where they said steel erection. So I feel that, man. I had to be professional and continue on without laughing.
There's an episode called No Laughing, where McVicker bans the boys from laughing for a week. However, Buzzsaw finds this out and just so happens to side through a sex ed class.
Oh, yeah, they didn't last long. Yeah, I remember them covering their mouths, and he just kept saying penis and vagina and, like, penetration, and, like, words that would, excite a 14-year-old virgin, probably.
Episode called Bus Trip, where Van Driesen takes the class out on a field trip. So not only does he have to deal with the boys being the boys, but he has to deal with them on a school bus.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the crash. Oh man.
That episode was apparently the best, voted the best episode of Beavis and Butthead ever of all time. Yes.
Really? I have to rewatch that one.
The boys end up
I vaguely remember
they moon all the passengers, moon all the other cars, and this is the thing. Given these simple, I'll hold that thought for a second. The final episode was called Beavis and Butthead Are Dead, which was the second greatest episode of all time. And as we mentioned earlier, McVicker has a heart attack when the boys come back to the school after they were declared dead. So the boys were declared dead because they hadn't come to school for 3 weeks, and. When the school eulogizes them, the local TV station kicks in a check if they can be found, and they just roll up, take the money, and McVicker has a heart attack and dies.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Just couple of just took care of it all in one fell swoop.
Now, look, I know on the face of it, those descriptions very, very brief and sound like what the hell are they talking about? But if you have not seen it, I urge you. Go watch these episodes because we can't do it justice.
Yeah, and there's so many subtleties. Yeah. I mean, ironically, to a show that's right around the realm of toilet humor and intelligence. Yeah. But the way it's written, there's all these little nuances and comedic gold that's just hidden away. Like. Finding a stray onion ring in your fries, just look at that, so really, really good.
But we've talked about all the good side of the show and it was funny, but it did cause some problems. You'd expect a show like this to completely and utterly cause problems.
Yeah, it would, and a lot of it was some scapegoating, but
which is always the case.
I mean. Yeah, that's going to happen. I mean, that it doesn't matter what type of media it is. People are always going to blame media. I mean, there's people that'll blame religious texts for things. I mean, just as quickly as they will a movie or a video game.
I mean, Beavis is a pyromaniac, as we mentioned. He'd always go fire, 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 right?
Fire, 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 fire.
And that was only like in the first half of the first season, and then he stopped.
You would burn ants. You would burn ants and stuff with a magnifying glass.
Yeah. And I mean, he stopped doing that all of a sudden, right? And people didn't know why. They just changed it and whatever, right? And that was because a 2-year-old child died in a house fire, right? It was a mobile home that was set on fire by a 5-year-old. And the family claimed that the 5-year-old had seen an episode of Beavis and Butthead, heard the chain of fire, and set fire to the house. This was called bullshit by the neighbors and friends, claiming that they didn't even have cable or satellite, so how in the hell did they watch Beavis and Butthead?
Scapegoating, yeah. They needed somebody to blame.
But MTV caved because I guess they didn't want to be sued, and they pulled the episode and then altered all the masters where Beavis is yelling fire. So the originals that were, if you didn't VHS them, you don't have them. They completely. Wow. And what they did is that he would chant words that sounded like fire, but weren't fire. Like, for example, when he was at Burger World, he'd yell, "Fryer, fryer, fryer," or he would about to say something to do with fire, and he'd get stopped.
Right, yeah. So like an homage, like a silent homage.
But when Comedy Central picked it up in 2011, in the first episode, Beavis, now that everything's out in the open, the restrictions are gone, he says fire like 8 times in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like South Park when they said shit 128 times or whatever it was. Yeah, wow.
I didn't know that word. That word isn't censored in the UK. It's censored over here.
Not anymore though.
No.
It's really kind of 50-50. It depends on the network.
Well, see the way
and the time it's airing and stuff.
The weird thing I find about in Britain you could say anything but fuck or after 9 o'clock. Which, are any derivatives of those two words. So when I'm watching South Park, that episode on British TV, and it's censoring the word shit, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Right. There was, I mean, you tell somebody they can't do something in a comedic world, they're going to do it.
Yeah, they're going to find a way to do it without doing it.
I'm going to bleep this because it is offensive, but I mean, there was an Australian comic who was told he couldn't say a certain word in Canada, So, he went away and wrote a song, and his very first gig in Canada that he ever did, he sang a song called, well, you can't say in Canada.
Right.
So, that wasn't the only thing that resulted in a death. In 1994, a child was killed by a bowling ball dropped from an overpass by an 8-year-old child in Seattle.
As an infant?
Yes. So, bowling ball got thrown off an overpass, crashed through the car, bang, right? It was an episode of Beavis and Butthead called Ball Breakers, right? And where they loaded a bowling ball full of explosives and dropped it off a height over an overpass, right?
Yeah.
However, again, this guy did not have access to cable. And this was before, like, everything was on every TV. It hadn't been syndicated yet. So...
Yeah, so you would have had to have premium cable.
You had to have premium cable, or you didn't watch it. And like they didn't even come up with a VHS at that point. It was still relatively new. So what happened was, right? They created an episode called Lightning Strikes, where Beavis and Butthead fly kites with keys in the middle of a thunderstorm. And when they were interviewed by the local news, they were asked, what the hell are they doing? Why are you flying a kite outside in a thunderstorm? They said, and I quote, they were inspired by some old dude wearing glasses. Benjamin Franklin. round about the time where the devil discovered electricity. But so because of this, right, the show got moved from its 9 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. And then it had not one, but 2 disclaimers. The first one was a written one, and then it was a verbalized one. So the written one said, Beavis and Butthead are not real. They are stupid cartoon... They are stupid cartoon people completely made up by this Texas guy whom we hardly even know. Beavis and Butthead are dumb, crude, thoughtless, ugly, sexist, self-destructive fools. But for some reason, the little wiener heads make us laugh. Which...
That's fair.
Yeah, it's true, but it's not really much of a disclaimer. It's just, we find it funny, so we're keeping it on the air. The second disclaimer was, and I think this was more kind of what led to the South Park one, which was Beavis and Butthead are not role models. They're not even human. They're cartoons. Some things that they do would cause a person to get hurt, expelled, arrested, possibly deported. To put it another way, don't try this at home. Which I guess is more of a good disclaimer, I mean, that's an actual disclaimer as opposed to just a warning.
Yeah, I mean, it tells you that this is exactly what it is. It's just for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
Don't try any of this stuff. Don't do these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, that's extremely fair.
And that's really it. That's Beavis and Butthead. I mean, I don't think we can do it justice with our descriptions. You have to go, if you've not seen it or haven't seen it in a long time, go watch it, right? Because, it produced... Okay, very few shows produce spin-offs. And if they do produce spin-offs, they don't produce more than one spin-off. I mean,
right.
Dairy and King of the Hill came from... Or the germ of the shows came from this. They had to rewrite King of the Hill because of rights issues, but it's a spin-off. You can't really argue with that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
It was a scathing satire of everything that was seen as Americana. It was a satire of teenagers, of teachers, of life in general, of attitudes. It was completely and utterly ripping everything completely to pieces, while at the same time being completely and utterly relatable.
Yeah, I mean, it was all like situations that were possible to get into, but only by like depravity or stupidity. Yeah. But nonetheless, like,
we all knew.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they're like following they're following their most basic instincts at all times, which is to get food and to
get laid,
have sex.
And I think we all knew a Beavis and a Butthead, and if you didn't, then the odds are you were the Beavis or the Butthead.
No.
Right? I mean, aside from the spin-offs, South Park claims to be original, but they really borrowed heavily from Beavis and Butthead.
There's some tropes. Yeah, there's some tropes that they definitely took. I don't even know how to say it, but they influence from, I guess you could
I
say.
mean, you have kids being being the center of attention, rude, crude, and bad attitudes. You had, the disclaimer at the beginning of the show. The mannerisms of the characters. I mean, Miss Crabtree was buzzcut. There's no other way around it. Okay. That.
Mr. Mackey, okay.
Yeah, so I mean that was completely taken from it. They wrote about things in the current time because the animation style was so crude that they could get away with maybe being 2 weeks out of date at the most. Something happens today, it's out in 2 weeks on the thing, and that the main people voiced and wrote the characters, voiced the characters, and they did everything themselves. I'm not saying South Park ripped off Beavis and Butthead, but it is heavily, heavily homaged.
Yeah, definitely the influence is there, and they did their own thing with it. But yeah, I mean, they were gonna have to have a disclaimer for that anyway. So I don't think that they so much copied them as so much that Beavis and Butthead set a standard.
Well, yeah, and I think.
For how you do that in a way.
Here's the thing. I think the answer to the South Park conundrum is in the episode Cartoon Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, they said themselves after the controversy when they ripped Family Guy a new asshole. They said themselves that they like Mike Judge and South Park, not South Park, and Beavis and Butthead, Dario and King of the Hill are awesome shows. And they kind of he returned the favorable stuff and everything like that. So I mean. I think it's more not necessarily homage, but like it's not Beavis and Butthead. This is just a tribute. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It was definitely edgier than stuff like The Simpsons. The Simpsons thought it was edgy, but it was nothing compared to Beavis and Butthead.
It was before Beavis and Butthead a little bit, but in comparison, no, it's very tame.
And
now.
We ranked this as number 2 of the cartoons of the 90s, behind The Simpsons. I still think that holds up.
Yeah, I would say either 1 or 2 for either of them. I would almost call them like 1A and 1B, really. I mean, even though they kind of served a different audience and they did a few things that were different, like as far as their influence and the acclaim and the critical analysis and the fact that people still adore this series, it says a lot.
They did what they aimed for well.
They did. They knew what they were doing right, and they excelled at it. They knew.
Mike Judge was able to tap into his audience and give them what they wanted without them knowing what they wanted.
Yeah, he was kind of like blazing a trail, if it were.
I think this, like I said, it's the second greatest animation show of the 90s, maybe the first, as we mentioned. 10 out of 10 TV show. If you have not seen it, I'm not sure what streaming network it's on. It probably isn't, but they do have some episodes on YouTube, and of course they have DVDs, and if you're really, really old, VHS is out there as well. And that's Beavis and Butthead, guys. Greg, man, thank you so much for coming on. I needed somebody who knew more about this than I did to get me through it, so I appreciate it.
Hey, right on. Yeah, it's one of my favorite shows of all time. To me, it was basically a inspiration for what I would never be. Like a humorous cautionary tale.
Don't do that. You'll end up like him. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. So, yeah,
and I know you've moved into competition for me, which is awesome. Now you have started doing streaming, have you not?
Yeah, more or less just for fun, because I've got access to some to a capture card and some other equipment and stuff like that. So I'm actually able to do vintage consoles. So that's kind of it's just I'm not trying to do anything with it other than just have fun. But I'm gonna probably be streaming at least once a week for about an hour or so. Last time I did Mario World 64, because I've never beat that game. What I'm doing is games that I've never beat.
Nice.
So I'm gonna start with that one, and then I'm gonna ghouls and ghosts, or ghosts and goblins. Yeah, ghosts and goblins. They changed it to on the Super, and it always confuses me. That's another one I've never beat. And there's 2 or 3 more. Mario 2, I've never beat that. So I've got all these games. So what I'll probably do is just do like an hour a week or so, and just for fun. I'm not trying to get endorsements or I'm just a passionate gamer that just has the gear and can stream. So I'm going to.
Sweet. Alrighty. Well, look, we've got a couple more things to talk about, and I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I was going to give you guys information on our charity drive. Aside from what I'm doing, what one part of the charity drive is, I'll explain the rest of it here in a moment. A sincerest thank you here at the network for Greg for taking the time out of his day for spending a little while talking to me about Beavis and Butthead. We had a good laugh, as you can tell. And, of course, if you want to go ahead and catch Greg stream some classic video games, check out twitch.tv/vintage_eyes. That's twitch.tv/vintage_eyes, okay? Talking of video games and streaming services and so on, Season 5 of the 90s Gamer drops this coming up Tuesday. That's Tuesday, the 6th of October, as we tackled Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. That's right, I'm going to be able to play one of my favorite games of all time now that I'm able to, and we are going to take Abe through the adventure of a lifetime, as he basically tries to let his people go from a lifetime of slavery and servitude. And will he be able to do it? Well, you'll only find out on our YouTube channel that you can look us up at bit.ly/bmnetwork-YouTube every Tuesday and every Thursday until this is done. We're going to be going ahead and trying to save all 99 Mudokons. We did a live stream of it last year, the remastered version, and we got 2/3 of the way there before it just became too much and I was unable to finish. This way, I'm going a lot faster and it's a lot more fun. So, talking of streaming and charity streaming, we also have our charity live stream on November 28th, 2020, where I'll be doing a live stream of FIFA, the Road to World Cup 98. That's one of the greatest soccer games ever made, and I'm going to see if I can take Wales, little old Wales, who weren't the best team back then, all the way to the World Cup final. Can I do it? You'd have to watch. What we're going to be doing as well is we're going to be joining the Movember charity drive. I myself have done this for the past maybe 8 years. I've grown some great ones and some horrible ones. But this year, we're going to be doing a little different, okay? We're encouraging all the guys out there to join us on the Because Maybe Network Mustache and Mullet Drive. If you grow a mustache or cut your hair into a mullet, come join us. We're trying to raise money for the Movember Foundation because the Movember Foundation is awesome. It was this time last year, exactly this time last year, where my mental health almost won the battle against me. I'm pleased to say that in the last year, that nothing even close to that has even crossed my mind. So looking out for other guys, there are 3 things that I basically do these kind of things for when it comes to men's health. That is men's mental health, men's physical health, and of course, the boys, okay? I'm a very, 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 very untactful person when I say that, guys, you need to talk to somebody when you're not okay. You need to admit to somebody when you're not okay. And whenever you get the chance, make sure the boys are not lumpy, okay? That's 3 things that I've always been advocating for. And I'm hoping with this Mustache and Mullet Drive that we can go ahead, have a little bit of fun, raise some money. And yeah, our goal was $250 last year. I want to go ahead and try that. It might seem like a drop in the bucket, but every little helps, okay? And it's going to be fun. Now, because I'm recording things in advance, and I've already recorded a lot of the Oddworld season, you will not see the mustache around about that time. You will not see the mullet around about that time. However, if you don't see it, all will be revealed November 28th on our YouTube channel, as we live stream FIFA the Road to World Cup 98, so that we can, again, raise more money and kind of do everything in one sitting, okay? So that's what we've got coming up over the next couple of months, and I'm really, really excited. Next week, Sarah returns as we talk about one of the most infamous movies that almost killed a lovable character. We're going to be talking about the first of the Schumacher Batmans, Batman Forever. It's going to be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and hop off here. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, or Instagram, check us out. You can find the links in the description below, as well as if you're on our YouTube channel, bit.ly/bmnetwork-youtube. And of course, if you're listening to this, and this is not where you usually listen to podcasts, but you just stumbled upon us, check us out. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and TuneIn. And until next week, we'll see you then. Have fun, guys and gals. Bye. Butt munch.